93, 93, 93. This is Aman Asha Renew from AshaRenew.com. Today I will speak on how to access the VRIL force. For those who may not know what the VRIL force is, all you will have to do is study the VRIL society, which comes in the form of, Nazi Germany and so on and so forth, the more occultic realm of what was going on, with the whole Hitler movement, so on and so forth. Now, to take it a step further, real energy is said to be in the center of the earth. So the people who have said they have been exposed to the real force have been exposed to the real force via the subterranean planes. For those who already know, we understand the subterranean planes to be what we call Hades or hell. So again, especially in the voodoo tradition, again, heaven or hell is at the center of the earth. And again, for those of us who are into the whole alien mythology, we understand the whole subterranean plane being where these extraterrestrial beings exist. Okay, to the point where we have whole worlds and dimensions within the subterranean planes of the planet Earth, right? So all this essentially is revolving around the idea of hell or Hades, the infernal planes, right? What is the purpose of the real energy or the real force? Well, according to the historical research of it, this is essentially what we will equate in today's terms or New Age terms as the Kundalini force. So what was called VRIL in the past, we have come to call it the Kundalini force in the sense of the same way we say in scientific terms where we only use 10% of the brain. Most people, you can say, only use 10% of their Kundalini potential because, as we know, it is at the base of the spine and it is wrapped around like a coil at least 3 times around the base of the spine. So, of course, we know that it takes a lot of force to not only awaken the Kundalini, but also to rise the Kundalini up the spine and into the brain. So essentially, you're taking lower energies, energies that are produced at the base chakra, right? Again, this is if we're going down, up. If you're going up, downward, basically starting at the crown and going to the root, you would just reverse this process, right? But I'm just speaking more so in mainstream terms for those who may not be familiar with the reverse method, right? So you're basically taking energies that are produced in the root chakra and bringing these forces up to what we call the crown chakra, which is where we reach our cosmic consciousness. The root chakra is basically how we root ourselves to this planet. So, this is essentially the whole path or journey of the Kundalini, going from the root to the crown, going from rooting yourself or grounding yourself in the subterranean planes, which is the root chakra, and making your way up the spine till you hit the crown chakra where you reach your cosmic intelligence, which is 100% activation of the brain. Again, it's just the same thing. We're just using different terms and different ways of explaining this process because this is the process that all of our ancestors essentially had to undergo regardless of whatever language they use, whatever symbolic codes they use to explain this process. This ultimately comes down to the same thing of utilizing your subterranean forces. Because again, as long as we are in the physical body, we are magnetically drawn to the earth or magnetically pulled to the earth. That's why when we jump, the earth's magnetism pulls us back down to the surface, right? So that's why we don't just float around anywhere. We are magnetically pulled or attracted or connected to the earth magnetically, just like pendulums. Pendulums are connected to the earth magnetic field, just like we are connected to the Earth's magnetic field. So if we are talking about the magnetic field of the Earth, this is essentially what we're speaking about when we're talking about the subterranean planes or the infernal planes. And again, this is where this whole demonic forces or demons and jinns, so on and so forth, all of these beings, even everything up to the clip off and Satan, so on and so forth, all these beings are said to exist in what is called this subterranean plane or this clip-offic world. Now, again, most people may not be familiar with how all of these things came into being, because this is more so going into the Gnostic study, going into the demiurge and going into Sophia, so on and so forth, as to why we are here, what's going on, and why you would want to access these realms. Because again, if you're looking at this or viewing this from a religious perspective, yes, you have no business going into the subterranean plane or going into the infernal plane or going into hell. But if we are looking at this from an esoteric perspective, and again, that's why I equate it to the Kundalini, because once we look at the esoteric principles and we look at, okay, what is all of these snakes or serpents that we see throughout history, whether we study Egypt or India all the way to America, we see serpents and snakes all over the place. We clearly honored and venerated the snake, right? So we see this all throughout our history. If we study far enough, we're going to see those serpents all over the place. We understand the serpent as guardians of ancient wisdom, because again, serpents cannot be tamed. We may be able to tame snakes, but you cannot tame serpents, because serpents are just natural born killers. All they know is kill. Again, a snake, you can have like a pet snake, so on and so forth. So just give you a difference. There's a difference between a snake and a serpent. So if we're talking about the Kundalini force, we are talking about the serpentine force. And again, since we are speaking about the serpent, we understand the serpent is symbolic of ancient wisdom. So whenever we are studying this snake or this reptile or this reptilian, because this also goes into the reptilians, well, the offspring of the reptilians, if we're going to go with this whole alien thing, then the offspring of the reptilians is the serpent. So whether we want to equate the serpent in the Garden of Eden, so basically the demiurge created the Garden of Eden, then we have the serpent enlightening Adam and Eve, so on and so forth. Depending on what angle you want to view it, because there's many different angles to view this. So I'm not telling you which angle to view it. I'm just giving you the information so that you can make an informed decision, so that you know what's really going on and you don't get attached to all of these surface meanings, because we tend to get separated or distracted with these surface meanings, because we think we're talking about different things when we're really talking about the same thing. We really think that we're separate or we're different or we have different concepts and spiritual principles, when we're really all talking about the same thing. It's just different languages and different ways of explaining these ancient processes that we've been studying and putting in the work since ancient times. This is nothing new. We've been doing this forever, and we will always be doing this as long as we are in this reincarnation cycle. So the purpose is to escape reincarnation. In order for you to escape the reincarnation cycle, we must fully activate our Kundalini or our DNA codes or our serpentine force, or what is called the VRIL energy. So let me explain to you how to activate this in reverse, because again, I spoke about from going from the root to the crown. But again, if you've been viewing my channel for long enough, you understand that I have always been, speaking about the reverse, going from the top to the bottom, or starting at the top, going to the bottom, starting at the crown and ending at the root. Because to me, this makes more sense, especially if we're talking about the VRIL energy, which is activated through the root chakra. Because again, the root chakra is how we connect to the roots of the earth, or the clip-offic tree. You got the tree of life, then you got the tree of death. Well, the root chakra is how you connect to the tree of death. However, this is not the starting point. We're not there as at the starting point. We're not trying to do this at the start. This is the goal. So if you start at the crown, if you get into what I would say your cosmic intelligence, meaning you know who you are on an archetypal level, meaning you know what deity you are. You have found yourself in the stars. So you start there. You make that your starting point. Who am I in the stars? Am I Shiva? Am I Krishna? Am I Asar? in my aset. You figure out where you are in myth, who you are in myth, what story do you mostly resonate with. And once you activate your mythology, because once you study the mythology of yourself, because you identify with this deity or you identify with this spirit, so obviously the story is more so a codex for you to unlock. The story just holds the secret knowledge to unlock these codes that are already in our DNA. So once you resonate with, once again, with your archetypal self, then you study the story. The story holds the secret keys. Again, it's not obvious. You think you're reading a regular story, but it's really not. It just appears to be that way. Because again, if anybody thinks they're just reading something regular, they're not gonna really take it seriously. But if you understand you're reading your own story, you're reading about your own origins, and you're reading about not only your past, you're reading about your present as well as your future, to the point where again your future is to activate the VRIL force, to communicate with the subterranean planes without fear. Again, we're not, you ain't, it's not about, you're making deals with the devils and you're dealing with demons and all that. All that is just to spook you out of activating your root chakra. Because again, the root chakra resonates with Saturn. We understand Saturn resonates with Satan or the devil. So essentially, when you are activating your root chakra or your Saturn plane, you are tapping into what is called your devilish mind or your devilish, attributes or principles, which again is part of the tarot. So it is part of the universal consciousness. So the devil is not something that we cast away. It is something, or it is a principle of the universe. It's a better way of explaining this. So that what we call the devil is really a universal principle that we have to master. And we master that principle when we deal with our root chakra. But again, if you are starting at the root chakra, trying to bring this energy up, trying to bring the real force up into the cosmic worlds, we can understand why most people have a hard time doing this. So I'm essentially giving you an easier way to do what everybody always is speaking about and talking about anyway. They just have not studied enough to unlock the codes. Because again, anybody can learn about the seven chakras, anybody can learn about the new age science, the Hinduism, so on and so forth. Anybody can learn these things. But it's not till you become that, it's not until you become what you study. Basically, it's not until your knowledge becomes wisdom that you can actually see beyond the surface, so that you see what no one else sees, and you can clearly see the path because it has become a part of you, meaning you have taken upon the trials and tribulations of activating the kundalini, because we understand this is not something that is necessarily going to be pleasurable the whole time. This is also dealing with the hardships. Again, you may lose people, places, things, events, all these things, but you also may gain more than you lose. You may gain less, so on and so forth. No one can clearly tell you, because all of our stories is based on our archetypal image. So only your archetypal image can tell you exactly how your story will play out. But once you understand how your story plays out and you understand your attributes you have to unlock your DNA codes, again, to go into your root self or your root chakra or your primitive self or your Saturn state of mind or your satanic state of mind, again, all these things to keep you afraid, thinking that again you're doing something wrong, when honestly it's all about a matter of perspective. So I'm just giving you an extra perspective so that you can better understand what you already know. I'm sure I'm not telling anybody anything that they don't already know. I'm just giving you a different way of viewing what you already know, so that you have an easier time understanding these concepts, which we've been studying for the last 10 years. Most people have been studying it since 2012. But if you take it back a little bit further, we will begin to see that it's a whole storyline, it's a whole timeline. Most people don't even understand how long Hinduism has been in America. Hinduism has been in America for at least 200 years, since the 19th century. So since the 19th century, Hinduism has been a part of American culture, especially in California. And that's why California is so different, because it has 200 years of Hinduism. Most people don't know that unless you have been there, and it's not something that you just ask people. You just have to do your own research. And because I've done my own research and I've walked the lands, I can understand this and I can convey these things way more than somebody who can, who just walking around talking to people. You ain't really going to get this from the people. This has to be revealed to you through the spirit, and that's what I'm trying to help everyone do, is to get those direct revelations so that you can have. I'm not going to tell you you're going to have an easier time. You may actually have a harder time doing this, but the reward will be why you're doing it. It's not about essentially what you have to go through. It's about what are you doing it for. And again, once you connect with your archetypal image, you understand exactly why you're doing it. And if you don't understand why you're doing it, you will at least have the inclination to understand that you want to escape the cycles of reincarnation to access your own immortality. So this is a path towards immortality, and this is why they call the left-hand path the dragon's path. So this is essentially the dragon's path because, again, a winged serpent is a dragon. So the dragon's path is just the path of the winged serpent. Once we get past all of the boundaries and the limitations set in our way for us to look at this as a negative experience or something that is unusual or extraordinary. So that is a daily message. Keep tuning in. I'm going to keep coming with it. 93.